from ABC News. This Week with David Brinkley. Now from Washington, David Brinkley.
Is this a new world or a new look at the old one? In 33 states, 33 political leaders and presidential candidates are wondering what to do about the growing numbers of same-sex marriages, women marrying women and men marrying men. The first state likely to make it legal is Hawaii, raising the pressure from homosexual groups to do the same across the country. Senator Dole is against it. President Clinton is looking for ideas on how to deal with same-sex marriages, taxes, Social Security, other benefits, all complicated. What can government do with this? We'll ask our guests. Representative Barney Frank, Democrat, Massachusetts, who favors same-sex marriage, and Gary Bauer of the Family Research Council, who opposes it. Willie Brown, mayor of San Francisco, a city with a large gay community, and Dan Lungren, Attorney General of California. The U.S. Secretary of Transportation, Federico Pena, will be here to bring us up to date on the crash of a passenger jet in the Florida Everglades. And our discussion here with Sam Donaldson, George Will, and Cokie Roberts, here on our This Week program. In the meantime, we're returning to our topic for the day, and here's ABC's Michelle Norris on this country's growing interest in same-sex marriages, almost unheard of not long ago, and now much discussed. Michelle?
George, I give myself to you without reserve. From this day on...
David, what you see here may look like a wedding ceremony, but the vows exchanged yesterday are not legally binding. The debate over same-sex marriage is turning into a political showdown, and ground zero for the battle is Hawaii, where the state Supreme Court ruled that denying marriage licenses to homosexual couples was a form of discrimination.
Male and a female walk in and they're not married, they want a license, you give it to them. A male and a male walk in, want a license, you won't give it to them. You are discriminating against them.
The High Court sent the case back to trial, and Hawaii now could become the first state to recognize same-sex marriages.
That verdict would reverberate throughout the entire country, because under the U.S. Constitution, a marriage considered legal in one state is legal in all others.
That means gay and lesbian couples from the mainland could fly to Hawaii, get married, and then demand their marital rights back home. Rights such as filing joint tax returns, inheriting spousal property, and participating in family health plans. This week, Republican lawmakers tried to prevent that from happening by introducing new legislation designed to preempt the Hawaii decision.
The Defense of Marriage Act does not force any state to do anything. It does not outlaw anything. It simply says that one state cannot be forced to accept a homosexual marriage that might be recognized in another state.
The bill would achieve that by defining marriage as the legal union between one man and one woman. A spouse would be defined as a person of the opposite sex. In anticipation of the Hawaii decision, several states have taken action on their own. 8 states have passed laws outlawing same-sex marriage, and 8 more are considering similar legislation.
I now pronounce you domestic partners.
Events like this, where San Francisco Mayor Willie Brown presided over a commitment ceremony for 200 homosexual couples, have helped mobilize religious conservatives who say the issue is a political litmus test. Senator Bob Dole supports the effort to outlaw same-sex marriage as a co-sponsor of the proposed legislation. But the issue presents more of a dilemma for President Clinton, who has enjoyed strong support from the gay community. The White House says Mr. Clinton opposes same-sex marriage, but is not ready to commit to signing legislation that would outlaw it.
It becomes a defining moment for Bill Clinton because he can no longer have it both ways. He's either for one man and one woman in the heterosexual union of marriage, or he's going to be for the homosexual agenda.
What we are seeing here is a very cynical election year ploy to divide the nation and scapegoat one group of Americans.
As the campaign battle over traditional values intensifies, the question of whether unions like this should be legal could become a dividing issue in the race for the White House. David?
Michelle, thank you. Coming next, Congressman Barney Frank and Gary Bauer of the Family Research Council in a moment.
This Week with David Brinkley. Brought to you by GE. From aircraft engines to appliances, we bring good things to life. And by ADM, supermarket to the world.
Here with us now, Representative Barney Frank and Gary Bauer, along with George Will, Sam Donaldson, Cokie Roberts here in the studio. You know them all. Thank you for coming. Pleased to have you. Thank you. Now, Congressman Frank, you support the idea of same-sex marriages, right?
Yes, I do.
Okay. What about the complexities of it, of the family finances, of Social Security, insurance, all of that?
Well, they're no
Does that
greater.
bother you?
No, it doesn't bother me. What bothers me, frankly, is this notion, which I find really very illogical, that somehow the fact that two men or two women choose to love each other and live together in a committed relationship somehow threatens other people. The Republicans, who I think are desperately trying to change the subject from things like Medicare and Medicaid, I don't think it's a coincidence that they introduced their bill the same week they introduced their budget.
You think they don't want to talk about this?
They don't want to talk about the budget. They don't want to talk about education and the environment. But I don't understand. I live with another man when I'm in Washington, obviously not in Massachusetts. We're having a family brunch when I leave here for about 16. His parents, my sister's brother, a whole range of things. My 4-year-old niece, Madeline, I don't think she's going to be damaged by being in our house. I don't understand what it is that threatens them. Is it that straight couples, men and women who are in love with each other, are going to learn that Herb and I live together, and they're going to say, gee, why didn't I think of that, and leave each other? I can understand why people don't like us. I know that that's the case, but I do not logically understand the case that says we threaten their marriage, and they call it the defense of marriage. Defense against what?
Mr. Bauer, you want to answer that question and give us your thoughts on this?
Well, you know, David, in a century that's probably going to be known for an incredible number of bad ideas, it's probably fitting that we're going to end this century with one of the dopiest ones yet. Cultures for years, civilization for thousands of years, every major religious tradition has recognized marriage. The customs vary, how a marriage is performed, the rules of breaking one change from culture to culture. But in every culture and in every civilization, marriage has been built around the idea of bringing members of the opposite sex together, men and women. We shouldn't have to spend much time figuring out why that's the case on Mother's Day. Marriage is between two sexes for obvious reasons, and cultures have always said that. This is a radical idea that 70% of the American people reject, and as it's debated, as we're seeing in Hawaii, when the debate really fills the airways, as it did in that state, the number of people who reject it go up, not down.
George, what do you think about this?
You say that marriage is between two sexes for obvious reasons. Let's probe those reasons for just a moment. It can't just be for procreation, because sterile couples then couldn't get married or shouldn't get married, or postmenopausal women shouldn't apply for marriage licenses, etc. So one of the functions of marriage is to tame men, who are naturally sexual predators, probably. And another is caretaking, to institutionalize caretaking as people age. Why isn't that a reason for, don't both of those reasons apply to gay couples?
Well, there's I think, a natural law consideration here, George, about why civilizations basically say that marriage is between men and women. You know, if we went down the road that Congressman Frank is suggesting, there would be no argument against letting a man marry two other men, or letting a man marry two women. If you redefine marriage to mean everything, it will ultimately mean nothing.
Well, let's let Congressman address that. That was actually my next question. As a matter of principle, if you say same-sex marriages are justified because love exists and a committed relationship exists, by what principle can you then rule out polygamy?
The principles you did, that the experience with polygamy has been that it does not achieve part of what you talked about, caretaking, for instance, that in fact it can also promote more jealousy. I think the arguments for polygamy are separate from the arguments for same-sex marriage, because of the very reasons you talked about. And I still cannot for the life of me understand why they call this the defense of marriage. Well, they accuse me of attacking people. I live in a committed, loving relationship with another man. Why is that a problem for Mr. Bauer? How am I threatening him? What am I undermining in him? What about me and my lifestyle prevents him from doing exactly what he wants?
He's right there.
Well, yeah, Mr. Frank, you can live any way you choose to live, but when you make calls on the culture and the society to endorse it and to recognize it and to subsidize it, then it is legitimate for people, not just me.
But how does it threaten you? I don't want you to endorse it, please.
Well,
I do not want to go home and say to her, guess what, Gary Bauer thinks we're endorsing. I don't think he would be thrilled.
Why do you think I'm threatened? I'm just opposing what I believe. I'm opposing what is a radical social idea that 70% of the American people reject.
You don't want to argue the merits. You want to do a poll.
Well,
I understand that. There's a lot of that today. But why is it defense against what? You said defense. You said a defense against marriage. It's a defense against what? That's what I don't understand. Is your sense that heterosexual bonds, men and women in love, are so fragile that the simple example of two women living together will somehow disorient them?
No. My point is that healthy societies...
What's the threat?
Let me finish. That healthy societies endorse heterosexual relationships between men and women. It's not just America in the 1990s. It's every major culture on the face of the earth, every major religious tradition. This is one of the most radical, bizarre ideas to come down the pike in years, and the only way it can advance in the United States is if judges like those in Hawaii, unelected liberal judges, inflict it on the American people, because they will reject it any chance they have.
The issue, as I understand it in the lower court in Hawaii, is whether the government has a compelling interest in trying to prevent same-sex marriages. Other than your discussion of what you think society ought or ought not to be, what is the governmental compelling interest?
The compelling interest is that as a culture and a society, you don't want to send a message that marriage is everything. It is something very specific. It is a man and a woman joined together, hopefully for life. Obviously, in many cases, that doesn't work out. But civilized societies have promoted that idea based on both religious ideas and the natural law from time immemorial.
Mr. Frank, you can answer that, but I'd like you also to answer the question that you raised. You're going to have this luncheon today. Your niece, is it? The young
Yeah, she's 4 years old. My nephew is 20.
She's going to be there.
A whole range of people that'll be
Many people would say to you, well, the problem is that by example, you see, she will be led into a lifestyle that perhaps is not the one she would have chosen otherwise. Address that.
Many people will also say, of course, that Elvis is alive, the earth is flat, and that somehow I'm a threat to the culture. If I am, it may be because of other aspects of what I do. It's just nonsense. It's obvious nonsense. Most gay men and women grew up in straight households. I have nieces and nephews. Several of my nieces have grown. They're married. They will be there today with their children. The empirical evidence that somehow I'm going to have a bad influence on Madeline because she's going to see two people in a loving relationship is absolutely zero. We're just talking about fantasy here.
Cokie, we want to hear from you.
Two men are not the same as a man and a woman. And if anybody thinks that a child being raised by two men is going to come out the same as a child being raised by a mother and father, then maybe Elvis is alive.
Well, we're not raising her. We're just giving her a bunch.
Let's talk politics. President Clinton has apparently said that he is personally opposed to same-sex marriages. What does that do politically for him in the gay community?
It causes some people some unhappiness, but I think the fact is, as Mr. Bauer says, 70% of the people are against gay marriage. We've grown up in a society in which people have been against a lot of things involving gay men and lesbians. I think we're making progress, but I recognize, yeah, it's very unpopular right now. And elected officials who are trying to appeal to broad majorities are, on the whole, going to say no. That's a fact of life. And I think that will
as a Democrat, do you want to see him endorse this?
No, because I make this distinction. It is the Republicans, let's be clear, there is not now gay marriage. It's nowhere existent. The states do not need any federal help to say no to it. This notion that we're going to prevent the states from being done. No, the states by themselves, as your map showed, can pass any law they want. This is a desperate Republican ploy. Mr. Bennett has said, let's raise this issue. Mr. Crystal has said, this This is the sleeper issue, sleeping with whom issue, I suppose, is what he meant. The Republicans are trying desperately to change the subject and trying to make it an issue. It isn't an issue because the president's against gay marriage.
We're reading that in a lot of places. That the Republicans are saying Bob Dole blew it on partial birth abortion, that he hasn't been able to get his act together. This is the issue where he can make Bill Clinton look like a way out liberal.
Well, look, it would be bizarre to have a presidential campaign and not have the major candidates for president address something that is so basic and fundamental to the kind of culture we are. I believe that Bob Dole ought to make an issue out of this, ought to talk about it to the American people. The president's trying to have it both ways. He, with Barney Frank's help, is saying he's against gay marriages, but he continues to appoint judges to the High Court that find all kinds of invisible rights.
That is so misleading.
That makes
No
it very
federal judge has been involved in
things.
this. That's just absolute misrepresentation. You're talking about state judges in Hawaii. That's the kind of sleazy campaign tactics we ought to stay away from. No federal judge has dealt with this issue
the
in a way.
Federal courts are dealing with all sorts.
They have not. There was not a single. No,
the federal courts are dealing with all sorts of gay rights
issues. You are totally misrepresenting.
They will deal with this one too.
They are not dealing with the gay rights issue right now. In the marriage case, you're giving a misleading impression deliberately. This is part of the desperation of the right-wing campaign.
There's no desperation.
These are state judges in Hawaii, not federal judges.
You don't have to be right-wing to think that men marrying men and women marrying women is a dopey idea.
You have to be right-wing to think that's a central issue in American politics and that people are more threatened by two men loving each other than by cuts in Medicare or cuts in environmental aid. And that's what you guys are trying to do. Change the subject away from things that you're losing on to some side issue.
It's your movement that's making it a central issue. And when somebody joins the debate, you begin to throw out terms like bigot and intolerant and scare tactics and also, well,
I think your conscience is bothering you.
Give us a few more minutes.
I said your campaign tactics were sleazy when you suggest this is federal judges when you know very well that it's not, that it's state judges.
This is a dopey idea, David, and it will be rejected by the
thank you both for coming today.
Thank you.
We've been pleased to have you and to hear your discussion of this issue. Thank you for coming again.
Thank you.
And coming next, Willie Brown, Mayor of San Francisco, and Dan Lungren, Attorney General of California. In a moment. Mayor Brown and Attorney General Lungren, we are happy to have both of you come today and give us your views on the subject we are discussing. Mr. Brown, you first. I gather you had a sort of mass wedding of same-sex wedding in the City Hall in San Francisco, and I believe you said it was a big success. Is that right?
I did say it was a success, David, and it did occur at what we call now City Hall. It's a temporary structure because our City Hall is under repair. It came on the heels of a piece of legislation passed by our Board of Supervisors about a month earlier. And in that, we had an opportunity to, in fact, solemnize the relationship under the legislation passed in this city. And we did so with great joy.
You had wedding cake, champagne, the whole business, right?
Practically everything that's ever been associated with weddings.
Good. Cokie?
Mayor Brown, I want to pick up where we left off with politics. You are a Democrat. Your city has a large number of gay voters. So in San Francisco, I assume this is popular. But the rest of the country, you've heard the polls. Is this really a line you want the Democratic Party to take?
I believe, Cokie, that this particular issue will not be a disability to Democrats anywhere in this nation, regardless of the position they may take on the issue. There will be differences. There's no matter what, there will be differences. In my city, however, as a matter of fact, albeit in most of the Democratic strongholds in the state of California, there will be support for this issue. It is not a cutting-edge issue, however.
Attorney General Lungren, do you see it as a cutting-edge issue?
Well, I think this is just really a question of what common sense is. I think we have looked at the wrong thing. That is, this really comes down to a question of whether heterosexual marriage can have a preferred status in our laws and in our culture. It's not an attack, to be against gay marriages is not an attack on gays. Rather, it's a defense of what the traditional notion of marriage is. And if you ask whether that's a cutting-edge issue, I think you'll find the average person is just awakening, turning on this show, and realizing that this has become an issue. This has not been brought to the fore by the Republican Party or by voters. It's been brought to the fore as a result of a decision made by judges, the impact of which may encompass all of the states because of the full faith and credit clause of the United States Constitution. So that's how it's come in. As such, it will probably be an issue. And if it is fully and firmly debated, I think it may very well be a cutting issue. But that's not the important thing, whether or not it's a cutting issue. It's whether or not we can defend a traditional notion of a preferred status for heterosexual marriage.
Mayor Brown, on that, you said in that ceremony that the legitimacy, that it gave legitimacy to people in love. There are lots of people who say they're in love, men with several women, people with their cousins or siblings. Do you want to give legitimacy to all of that?
Well, that's really not the issue, Cokie. The issue is whether or not you're able to go into a hospital as a relative or as someone in a relationship with the responsibility for that individual who may be in the hospital. A decision that may have to be made, that's life or death savings. The question of whether or not you can pass on your property with the same kinds of benefits that are flowing through the heterosexual transfer process. The question of whether or not you can be, in fact, responsible for another individual, and we in society do not have to be responsible. That's what this issue happens to be, not any of the other kinds of things that have been said by other people.
Mr. Lungren, I'm interested in the idea of whether there's a compelling government interest, as there is in the Wyatt case, in trying to prevent same-sex marriages. San Francisco, as you know, has a very large gay and lesbian community. The city is not affected adversely, is it, by the fact that that exists? And although there is no marriage at the moment, if these people who have partnerships were able to be married, would it somehow cause disruption in San Francisco, which would require a compelling government interest to prevent it?
Well, first of all, of course, San Francisco can call it whatever it wants. The question is whether or not it has legal status as a marriage throughout the state of California and then given full faith and credit throughout the United States.
Yes, but I'm asking you, what is the governmental interest in preventing it? What is the compelling interest?
The compelling interest is a preferred status for marriage between heterosexuals. And the base for that, frankly, is that society over the generations and the centuries, actually you can take it back to the original writings in the Torah up to the present time, has established that the union between a man and a woman which protects the child rearing is at base the essential protection for society. That doesn't mean that there are not marriages of heterosexuals that don't produce a child. However, at base, that's exactly what we're talking about. And as long as you get away from that analysis, you don't understand what it's all about. That is the compelling state interest. There's no doubt about that.
All right, Mayor Brown, the Attorney General has talked about a base for societal interest. In San Francisco, with these gay partners not yet blessed by marriage, is there a base that's being eroded? And if so, tell us how.
Not at all. There's no such thing as a base being eroded. What we have in San Francisco are people who genuinely care about each other. And they say up front, we don't want the city and county of San Francisco taking care of us. I will take care of you and you take care of me. If I fall by the wayside and lose my job, you don't have to go on welfare. You live in my household. The two of us are going to acquire property together. We're going to pool our resources and invest them appropriately and grow the assessed valuation of this particular city. Those are all very positive things. What Dan Lungren is talking about, I frankly don't understand. I don't see Dan Lungren nor any of the Republicans out there opposing, for an example, people who are in committed relationships that happen to be heterosexuals. We happen to have rules and regulations that sanction them. Marvin versus Marvin is a case in point in which two people had a committed relationship, but it was not solemnized in any fashion except when it came time to separate. And there was a division of property. And he supports that. He sustains that. I don't understand what his problem is with reference to two people of the same sex being treated the same way.
Attorney General?
The problem is that the traditional marriage in America is under attack for many different things. And the consequences of that have been horrendous, particularly with our young people today. When we start looking at the problems we have with young people, when we start looking at the problems of violence perpetrated by young people, I think there's an inescapable conclusion. And that is we have seen a dramatic erosion of the strength of the families. We need to protect the families, the heterosexual unit that has existed for centuries but's been under attack in many ways. And what society does is establish a preferred status. If in fact you have this equivalency between heterosexual marriage and homosexual marriage. You have then said that you do not allow a preferred status. That's it, purely and simply. It's not against those who are homosexual. It is a preference for heterosexual marriages because they have proven to be the cornerstone of a society, particularly dealing with child rearing.
Mr. Lungren, you're worried about the status of that cornerstone, and California was one of the states that pioneered no-fault divorce. What do you say to the gay activists who say, what makes you think that same-sex marriages would do as much damage to marriage as no-fault divorce has done?
Because if you have the legal determination that there cannot be a preferred status for heterosexual marriage, you open yourself up to all sorts of other attacks on it being something unique in our society. We go all the way to the question of bigamy, we go to the question of marrying between cousins, and so forth and so on. Once you eliminate that preferred status, there is nothing wrong with looking at specific types of problems that are dealt with now with respect to two committed people who happen to be homosexual in terms of being able to go to the hospital, being able to make decisions with respect to someone who is a partner who's ill in the hospital. That can be a very refined, very specific type of legislation, not upsetting the traditional basis of a preferred status for marriage. It's almost beyond belief that we even debate this as if this is not something that is bedrock in our experience for thousands of years.
Mr. Brown, what Mr. Lungren is saying and others saying is that you're getting on a slippery slope and we don't know where we'll stop. Let me hear your principled argument that would stop us from going from same-sex marriage to polygamy. What is the principle that would outlaw that?
I don't think that's relevant at all. I think
Are you saying you cannot make that argument?
I don't think you can make that argument. I think we make each decision as the circumstances present themselves. There isn't anybody out there, except maybe some people on the religious side, claiming the right to be able to marry on multiples or to have relationships on multiples. That's not sanctioned, whether it is something that is done privately, whether it is something done by the religious process or something done by the governmental process. We know that there are some tremendous negatives. There is real confusion that goes into that process. And so that's not being recommended. If it's recommended, we ought to debate that on its merits. We should not, however, somehow pollute this issue with those kinds of things that we want to discuss.
Mr. Brown,
that's not the issue. And believe me, when Dan Lungren says he believes in domestic partnerships, I'm absolutely amazed that he would not, in fact, sanction what we've done in San Francisco.
David, could we just ask Attorney General Lungren?
I was about to. Go ahead.
Well, Attorney General, your name is sometimes mentioned as a possible running mate with Bob Dole because of the importance of California. Would if asked, would you accept?
Well, I haven't been asked. I haven't discussed it with Bob Dole, and we'd cross that bridge when we come to it. Right now, I'm very involved being Attorney General and also with an exploratory campaign for Governor of the state of California.
But you wouldn't turn it down?
Well, we'll cross that bridge when we come to, but no one's ever even talked to me about that.
General, thank you. And Mr. Brown, thank you. Thank you both very much.
Thank you very much.
We're happy to have both of you with us today. Thank you for coming. Coming next, our discussion here within our own little group. No outsiders, no visiting experts. In a moment. ABC and all the television networks have announced they will give free airtime to politicians during the campaign for the presidency. Something new and interesting. And George, how important is it?
Not very. I don't think that the country feels that there's a scarcity of politicians in their lives in years divisible by 4. An awful lot of the country has access to CNN, which is all news anyway, and to C-SPAN, which gives us lots of political rhetoric. It'll be very interesting to see what audience they get.
Well, that's a good point. I mean, it seems to me that we're people like us who cover politics and are interested in politics are always making the argument, let's do politics, and getting the argument back, nobody's terribly interested. And getting politicians on for long periods of time seems to me to be an invitation to turn the channel.
Yeah, but it's a good idea. I mean, the thing that's driven money, of course, in politics is television time. That's what's driven the cost up. And perhaps in the presidential election it's a little different, but let them have some free air time. And let's, as you say, let them see if they can find an audience. I would trust that everyone would watch. Of course, the statistics suggest in the past that is not the case, but let them put their messages out. And I think one good question is, how will they do it? Well, you know, Bill Clinton will get out there. I mean, he's Donahue, he's, you know, Koppel. He'll take that microphone and run with it. What kind of programming will Bob Dole put on? That's going to be the question.
Well, they will all hire experts to advise them, I assume.
Well, the last expert that advised Senator Dole after the State of the Union speech, you'll recall, that the president made, had him stand, so he was nervous, in front of a dark background, a dark picture, a dark flag, so he looked like he came. So if that expert wants to have another try at it, good luck.
I just think, look, you just made the point that Bill Clinton will take the microphone and go with it. All of these candidates have discovered ways to get to the viewers, voters, unfiltered by us. And they do it on radio talk shows, they do it on television call-in shows, they do it in town meetings, they do it in all kinds of ways. And I think that's great. The more the merrier. People should have as much access as anybody could humanly want. I don't think it's terribly wise for us, however, to be in the position of saying that that is the best way to get information from a candidate. I think that the idea that they go unfiltered also means they go unchallenged, uncorrected, with just saying exactly what they want to say without anybody saying, hold on a minute, that what you're saying there isn't true.
Implicit in giving free time is that they also have some control over the format. If we were to say, all right, we're going to give you free time, and here is exactly the way we'll do it, and here's exactly the way we'll question you, what good is that?
I still think that the interesting thing would be some network will put the politicians on opposite Seinfeld, and someone else will put them opposite Friends when they can't win anyway.
Well,
you can't expect them to do in their pocketbooks.
Exactly.
Totally.
another issue under discussion in Washington at the moment is our relations with China. The MFN, Most Favored Nation deal, giving them the best terms of any country, equally good as any country. And China's done some bad things, selling nuclear materials to other countries, which we asked them not to do. So what are we going to do? Let them get away with it?
And sterilizing women and starving orphans.
All kinds
it's a
of
grotesque regime. But there's an empirical question as to whether or not trade sanctions change that. It's unclear. What Mr. Dole said this week was he's not going to differ from the president on this. And that provides an opening for Pat Buchanan, if he's looking for one, as an excuse to challenge Bob Dole either at the convention or as a third-party candidate. Because the crux of Buchanan's doctrine, and it's not a frivolous one, is that we're subordinating too many values to economic forces anyway.
Yes, well, China's a very large market, and quite clearly our industrialists have a compelling interest in opening it and keeping it open. What I think we ought to do, therefore, is do away with the hypocrisy. Change our laws. Don't pretend that we're going to try to hold other nations to human rights. And when it comes to the sale of nuclear weapons, or not weapons but technology, yes, we say to China, well, maybe you did, maybe you didn't, don't do it again. Why not just say, okay, I'm not for that, but I am for being honest about it. And if we're going to treat China this way, then what about a smaller country? Oh, we can lord it over them. No, let's just do away with it all.
Well, because you want to have some kind of stick, that's why.
But if you don't use it,
but
what's good your stick if you say...
You threaten with it, and there are times you use it, and in the sanctions that were just not imposed over nuclear proliferation, which you could certainly make a case is in our national interest to not have China going around selling things that make it possible for other countries to have nuclear weapons. Now they've claimed, the administration claims China really didn't know and the dollar amount was small enough. And now what they claim they got out of it was a commitment by China to be much more careful in its nuclear sales. If that's true, that's worth something.
You know, we're really
so
getting
that
tough.
The stick then does make a little bit of a difference.
The only way we seem to be getting really tough on China is on the measure of copyright and infringement of copyrights.
Intellectual property.
Well, and I must tell you,
records, all of that.
That's Hollywood, and I'm for it, except Bill Clinton's backers really want that, so he's going to get tough with a big stick on that one, right?
I have to interrupt here briefly. We'll be back with more of our discussion and maybe argument in a moment. Finally, this week, Senator Dole and President Clinton had a brief exchange of insults on television, though not in the same room. Clinton in the White House and Dole at the Capitol. And they both agreed it would be really nice just to put politics aside. Well, it might have been really nice if they'd done it, but they didn't. It's not even clear they would know how to do that if they tried. What would politicians talk about if they didn't talk about politics? On this occasion, Clinton accused Dole of extremism, deadlock, government shutdowns. The Republican chairman accused Clinton of the most transparent, phony hypocrisy I've ever seen. Since this kind of stuff will go on from now on until the election in November and beyond, it would be nice if the two of them found some new material. We've heard all of that, and it's still 6 months till the election. For all of us at ABC News, until next week, thank you.